May we be seated? Good morning, honorable members. How are you? We thank God for the rain in Western Cape. We hope it's going to continue so that the dams are indeed full. Would like to welcome our guests to Parliament who are in the gallery. Namgelekile bomama na bobaba. Just a bit of house rules. While we welcome you as our guests, we will appeal that as you are seated there, you do not participate in the debate and what happens here. You are not allowed to clap hands. You are not allowed to chat back when members are being naughty, which they sometimes do. You must just sit and listen to the debate and reflect on whether or not we represent you as citizens in the best way we need to. So I hope we will be able to appreciate that little bit of the rule. Thank you very much, our guests. Ki a leboga, siyabonga. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Debate on 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. Count me in, together moving a non-violent South Africa forward.
Thank you. The Minister of Women in the Presidency, Honorable Shabang.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. This year marks 19 years since the United Nations adopted the 16 Days of Activism campaign for no violence against women and children. This debate is important for us to reflect on progress we have made and the challenges we continue to face in building a safe society free from fear and violence. Ending the scourge of violence against women and children remains a top priority of this government. It is for these reasons that we have extended the 16 Days of Activism campaign to 365 days of continuous campaign, mobilization, and activism to transform attitudes and behaviors for the common good. Vision 2030 of the National Development and the United Nations SDGs sets targets for addressing persistent discrimination against women and addressing patriarchal attitudes and challenges of triple challenges of inequality and access to education. Patriarchy continues to deny women opportunities to lead the lives they desire. Further, social, cultural, religious, and educational barriers also continue to limit the scope for women advancements and prospects for entering the job markets. As government, our programs are structured to respond to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particular Goal 5, which seeks to achieve gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. We continue to intensify our efforts to enhance skills and capabilities of women, especially rural women. This year, we have witnessed increase in femicide and overall violence against women and children. Lately, this violence has taken more barbaric acts of burning victims and even cannibalism in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. As promised, in partnership with provincial governments and various institutions, we launched the National Dialogues on Violence Against Women and Children program in the Limpopo in 2016. These dialogues enable us to engage with communities to better understand the root causes of violence against women and against women and children. They provide a platform for victims and perpetrators of violence against women and children to interact and to find common solutions. Our national dialogues have attracted both men and women who came forward to talk about their experiences in relation to violence against women and children. We know that violence against women and children is a complex, multi-layered, intergenerational, and systematic problem. So far, we have concluded that dialogues in the Limpopo, Northern Cape, and Mpumalanga, these dialogues took place in all district municipalities of the provinces, and yesterday we launched the Eastern Cape chapter of our dialogues on violence against women and children in partnership with the Eastern Cape provincial government and various stakeholders in the province. We will be conducting dialogues in all district municipalities of the Eastern Cape. The Eastern Cape, we want to welcome the traditional leadership which will be participating in all our dialogues, including Imbumba Yamakhosikazi, the wives of traditional leaders who are concerned about the violence against women and children. Preliminary findings are indicating that the dialogues which we've conducted have a number of identified factors perpetuating gender-based violence in our society. Some of those issues which we have found out that violence against women arises out of poverty, despair, and substance abuse. In some communities, we have noted incidents of incest, teenage pregnancies, and high level of substance abuse, which have produced fetal alcohol syndrome, which is linked to alcohol consumption during pregnancy. This is presenting more challenges to early child development. After each dialogue in the provinces, the department shares such information with the provincial government and relevant institutions to help inform policy interventions. It is also expected that the findings arising from the national dialogues will continue to contribute to the revision of the integrated program of action against women and children, and also in the review of this program in 2018. I wish to commend the increased involvement of men who have taken a stand and become involved in various campaigns, which some of those are hashtag not in my name, hashtag no excuses, and there is no excuse for violence. Conversations on the role of men in changing gender relations are a necessity in a society that cares about changing attitudes and mindset in transforming unequal power relations between men and women. The Sanak men's sector and movements such as the Takuwami Reme are playing a leading role in mobilizing men to stand up against gender-based violence in our country. We work with them at various times in making sure that in different communities, we are able to make an impact. Takuwani Reme is addressing men and its work with women and LGBTI organizations to ensure that no one is left behind. It also calls for strategic partnership with government through their Pila campaign, Mzansi Men. These are programs which intend to ensure that the issue of violence against women continues to be a priority. Over the weekend, we had a successful men's parliament, which was held here in Cape Town, and also we had a successful men's march on Sunday in making sure that the abuse of women and children continues to be a priority. Very critical to this was that the 19th of November, which was Sunday, it was an International Men's Day. And given this, South African men committed themselves to continue to use this day in fighting the various scourges and ills in our country. We welcome efforts by men who participated in this forum, including Ubuhle Bamadoda, Show Me Your Number, What's in Your Pocket, Not in My Name, Our Father, Men on the Mountain, and Dads in the Picture. We are pleased to note the 5-year hashtag No Excuse campaign to change behaviors and work with over 10,000 taverns to prevent violence associated with alcohol abuse. The Men's Parliament resolved that the Men's Parliament sittings will take place every 2 years at national level annually, at provincial level, and 6 months at district level, every 3 months at local level, and daily, weekly and monthly at ward and state levels. Men are now talking about the problems of absent fathers, an impact on families, and the need to impart values. These campaigns will help nurture your young boys to become better citizens that uphold the Constitution. During the 16 days of activism, which we have launched in the Eastern Cape this week, men must be at the center of advocacy in tackling the scourge of violence against women and children. We welcome and support the Namula app, which has been initiated and rolled out nationally. And I must also welcome the ambassador who leads the Namula campaign, which is Yusuf Abramji, who's with us today. Namula is a crime response app that allows users to share their GPS coordinates, name and nature of the emergencies within 24/7 response call centers. This online panic button guarantees users a call back within 90 seconds. It points out exactly the location, making it easy for emergency services and the police to respond effectively. Cell phones are useful tools in our fight against gender-based violence. We also have partnered with Dial Direct in sponsoring the Namuna app, and I am pleased that today this app is going to be a success in fighting violence against women. Further, we're working with the Minister of Police who have endorsed Namula app, and I want to urge all members of this House, both men and women, to download the app and make sure that they report crime as it occurs in various communities. I'm also pleased that the business sector has taken a stand in supporting the fight against crime and violence against women and children. First for Women is investing money to fight gender-based violence. Other companies and NGOs are also following suit. We can only do more as a collective. Our continuous partnership with the faith-based organizations like the Rema Chat, Umkhosi Wamadoda, National Religious Leaders Council, the Jewish Board of Deputies, including religious programs on radio and television. These are efforts to ensure that the message of no violence and advocacy continues to reach all sectors of society where they spend their time. Faith-based organizations are critical as advocates for a South Africa that is safe for women and children, in part because their stakeholders are highly receptive to their messages. Research institutions have done a lot of work, and we are now looking at ways in which their work can help us in formulating our responses to the scourge of violence in our country. Within government, I am pleased that every province and most government institutions have a program responding to violence against women and children. We will be partnering with the Department of Transport to maximize the reach and impact of our message on violence against women and children in their Arrive Alive this festive season. We also continuously work closely with SANEC men's sector and She Conquers on issue of adolescents, girls, children. And She Conquers is a 3-year campaign which focuses on decreasing new HIV infection in girls and young women up to the age of 14, but also intend to reduce teenage pregnancy, reducing gender-based violence, and retaining young women and adolescents in schools. Through the partnership, we have grown awareness regarding the negative impact of gender-based violence campaign and how it should be eradicated. The IMC on Violence Against Women and Children Program of Action, which was launched in 2012, I'm happy to announce that Cabinet took a decision that all these needs to be reviewed in making sure we come up with a comprehensive plan which is inclusive of all various participants in our country. As I conclude, we must be worried about what happens in our psyche as a society. We need to integrate values of Ubuntu with our democratic values. These values must be reflected into our action. We need a discourse on the destruction of our cultural norms. Freedom would be meaningless if women and children cannot walk freely in our streets. Freedom will be meaningless if our children cannot play freely in their neighborhood. Freedom will be meaningless if the home is no longer a safe place to be for women and children. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Ilunga elihloniphekile uMama Robinson.
Honourable Speaker, I cannot but ask who thinks up these slogans for our debates. Clearly someone who is out of touch with the reality of South Africa today, with ministers of state cozy in their cocoons of corruption and privilege, closeted from the harsh, desperate lives of the majority of South Africans, with many hungry children searching for a crust of bread, unemployed parents getting sucked into crime, and the oblivion provided by alcohol or drugs. Much of our justice system is failing us, with criminal and maintenance courts understaffed and compromised in their service delivery. How can we honestly say that we are moving towards a non-violent South Africa when we look at the statistics? The soaring rates of sexual violence, indecent assault, rape, domestic violence, and human trafficking being on the increase. These are everyday occurrences, so sometimes one becomes inured to the shock and horror. But when one of our own peers, a member of this august house, is found guilty and sentenced, his first crime a petty one, but then going on to assault 3 women in a fit of rage, it shows that violence against women pervades every level of our society and knows no class, color, or creed. It makes one wonder what criteria are used by the president when he selects his cabinet. Certainly not merit. We were assured when the charges were laid with the Ethics Committee, but what does this committee do? It withdraws the charges. What ethics are expected of honourable members? The first duty of government is to secure the safety of all its citizens. A strong message needs to be sent out to other potential abusers to act as a deterrent to all patriarchal predators. Another example of the half-hearted manner in which the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development has been dealing with crimes against women and children is to be found in the way it has dealt with budget cuts. In the difficult financial departments, all are supposed to rationalize or leave vacant what are non-critical posts. So what has been the response of this ministry? Well, firstly, over the last year or so, ended the contracts of 17 workers at the Sexual Offences Registry, staff who were responsible to verify and vet the details of all sex offenders in order for them to be included in the Sexual Offences Register. The accuracy of that register is crucial, as it should enable us to prevent sexual predators from being appointed at workplaces where they will have direct access to vulnerable children. We've seen a massive increase of sexual offences committed at schools by educators. The ministry earlier this year tried to shelve the rollout of dedicated sexual offence courts by including an amendment to this effect. Luckily, this was stopped by an outcry from civil society groups and the opposition. However, the rollout of these vitally needed sexual offence courts will proceed at a snail's pace due to the excuse of budgetary constraints. Yet government is happy to be extravagant about luxuries and non-essentials, which do not improve the quality of life of the ordinary person in the street. We heard recently that 700,000 will be spent to ensure that a minister gets a super-duper bribe that could have built at least 11 RDP houses. The vulnerable in our society are indeed vulnerable in more ways than one. This brings me to the maintenance courts, whose inaction is inflicting so much harm on parents and children. Mothers are trapped in a poverty cycle, battling to feed and raise their children. But maintenance services are very limited due to the moratorium placed on the employment of staff. I quote from a letter received from the Department of Justice Regional Officer located in Plain Street. We advise that since there's a moratorium on the employment of staff, the workload has increased. We understand your concern and frustration and will forward your complaint to our relevant supervisor who have the authority to forward it to the national office, sending it upstairs where the people are less involved and very often couldn't be bothered. Do you know that there is only one maintenance officer at Plain Street and people sit there waiting for hours? It takes weeks and months and years for maintenance payment to be made, and the battle for survival continues. Surely this is a violation of the access to justice. 1 year ago, the DA Women's Network held a picket outside Parliament.
Member, your time
We
is
handed
up.
a memorandum to the DAJ about the problems. We've still not received a reply. Is there a shredding machine that gobbles up
Honourable
all the
member.
petitions? Why did
Order. Honourable Robinson, you can see your time is
No,
finished.
it says I've got 20 minutes.
No,
23 minutes retaining.
no.
We would love to be counted in as moving a non-violent
Order.
society.
Honourable
Under a
member.
DA administration,
It's
we will
not.
put the interests of the poor, the marginalized,
Honourable
and the
Robinson.
vulnerable first. Enkosi kakhulu. Thank you, ma'am.
Honourable members, can I appeal to you? Once it hits red, it means your time is off, yes. You are at my mercy when I give you some few seconds. Can I please appeal that we do keep to our time? Honourable Tembekwayo.
Honorable Chairperson, this time every year, we have made some sort of a tradition as a nation to utter hello words and recommit ourselves to the fight against the pervasive and toxic cancer of violent abuse perpetrated by men against women and children. South Africa has one of the highest incidents of women and children abuse in the world. Early this year, Thembisile Yente was found dead in her office at Eskom, having been missing for almost 2 weeks. Moreover, just last week, it was argued that the person who was charged with her murder might be exonerated by DNA evidence. In May, a 30-year-old Unati Madoteni was found brutally murdered, her eyes gouged out and raped in Langa Township, here in Cape Town. In May, still, a 14-month-old baby was raped and killed by her own father in Khayelitsha, and some in the family wanted this resolved by the family. On 27 April, Karabo Mokoena was killed and burned by her boyfriend. Early in May, Iya Payamile's mutilated body was discovered in a toilet just 3 blocks from her Mankakaza Street home in Khayelitsha. Just last week, Manana got off with a slap on his wrist for savagely beating up a woman. This is what happens regularly in between the annual events dedicated for fighting violence against women and children. What is wrong with our society? What makes men so violent towards women and children, Honorable Chairperson? Most cases of sexual violence in rural areas and in townships go unreported. So the SAPS statistics are not a true reflection of the true nature of sexual violence, but they indicate a very horrifying picture of the violence women and girl children are exposed to on a daily basis. Women do not go to report these cases because more often the perpetrators of these horrific crimes are colleagues and bosses, husbands, uncles, brothers, and generally people well known to women and children, and on whom women and children depend for income, shelter, and food. So, at the center of women and children abuse are economic inequalities, perpetrated by the patriarchal nature of the South African society, which still views the contribution of women to society and the economy with disdain. These attitudes lead to the marginalization of women, to women getting paid less than men for the same job, to workplaces that are not women-friendly, and in some companies, here in the Western Cape, for instance, to women being paid with wine by the farmers who support and are supported by the DA. This leads to the criminal laws like Babaka Duduzani, thinking they can escape the long arm of the law if they put women they like to leadership positions, to block any attempts
Order,
to bring
honourable
these
member.
criminals to book.
Your time is up.
Our branches must reflect new value systems that we want to create a South African free
Honourable
piety,
member.
free of abuse of women and children,
Thank
and
you.
free of all other forms of abuse. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honourable Van der Merwe. Order, honourable members, no dialoguing across the
Please.
House.
Honourable House Chairperson, South Africa's high levels of violence is deeply rooted in our painful past. A painful past which we have not yet dealt with. If we accept this, we must accept that we all bear a responsibility to resolve this crisis of violence. And if we move from this premise, we must also ask ourselves whether our government has played its role. By government's own admission, government's integrated plan of action to fight gender-based violence has failed. There are many reasons for this, but fundamentally because we had tasked the Department of Social Development to drive and implement this program. Yet we know the Minister of Social Development has been so busy manufacturing one SASSA crisis after another that this integrated plan of action has received no attention at all. And when it comes to messages around gender-based violence, there's a glaring lack of consistency from our leaders. Let us take one example, Minister Fikile Mbalula. What did he say about the DJ who allegedly beat his wife with a spanner? Well, he called him a dog and said he must rot in jail. But what did he say about convicted woman abuser Mr. Mduduzi Manana? Well, nix, nothing. What did the entire executive say when Mrs. Grace Mugabe beat up a woman in South Africa? Well, again, nix, nothing. They set her free under the false pretext of diplomatic immunity. It is no wonder then that our integrated plan of action has failed. We cannot say one thing but do another. Honourable House Chairperson, I must therefore ask myself whether we've even got the basics right in our fight against gender-based violence. And the answer is simply no. There are not enough shelters for abused women, and government will spend only a maximum of 67 Rand on a woman in an abuse centre, while spending 366 Rand on a prisoner in jail. Very few cases that are reported to the police ever make it to court, and only 8% of rapists are successfully prosecuted. We cannot fight back when the basics are not in place. We need a costed national plan to fight gender-based violence. We need adequate resources for this fight, and we need political will. These are the basics that must be in place in order for campaigns such as the 16 Days of Activism campaign to succeed. In conclusion, Honourable House Chairperson, I'm reminded of the words of Tracy Chapman in her song, Behind the Wall, when she says, "Last night I heard the screaming, loud voices behind the wall. It won't do no good to call the police. Always come late if they come at all. Last night I heard the screaming, then a silence that chilled my soul." As we stand here, a woman is screaming for help. It won't help to call the police because they'll come late if they come at all. And because of our failure to get the basics right, somewhere in a home, there will be a silence that will chill our souls. In pledging our support for the 16 Days of Activism campaign, it is my plea that we can and must do more. I thank you.
Ilungu elihloniphekile uMncwabe.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, Chairperson, honourable members. Sibulise komama bomthandazo sibabonayo. Siyilento esiyiyo ngenxa yenu siyabulela. Honourable Chairperson, there's a saying in Liberia that says, and I quote, "A house where a woman is not safe is not a home," unquote. Today we are debating 16 days of activism against violence directed at women and children, a violence which often happens in private spaces, a violence which betrays trust in love. According to Statistics Chair, in 2016, 51,895 cases of sexual crimes against women and children were reported. More than 900 children were murdered in South Africa from 2015 to 2016. This is according to the Institute of Race Relations. Police statistics reveal that more than 600 children were killed with a knife, while firearms were used in most 400 cases. Other causes of death involve poison, a butchered foot, an axe, and boiling oil. 1 in 5, or 21% of women in a relationship, has experienced physical violence by a partner. Stat SA said in its South African Demographic and Health Surveys in 2016, released in May, that South Africa's femicide rate is 5 times more than the global rate. Chair, we have asked ourselves, what kind of a society tolerates such outrage? What kind of a society participates in such evil? Unfortunately, the answer is South African society. It is our national disgrace that we should debate this shame every year, and every year the figures are higher, more grim. The question is, what can be done to erase this national shame? The NFP believes that intervention will be required at many levels. At state level, we need to adopt a national strategic plan on gender-based violence, similar to the plan tackling the HIV/AIDS. The current strategies on confronting violence against women and children are underfunded and uncoordinated, and more resources must be made available, and the hand of South African Police Service must be strengthened through dedicated teams dealing with gender-based violence and violence against children. At community level, we have to be proactive. Every perpetrator of violence against women and children is someone's father, someone's husband, someone's brother, or someone's son. We must break the silence, face the shame, and admit as a society that we are failing our women and children. It is time for civil society, churches,
Order.
NGOs, and the state to join hands
Your
and say
time is
enough
up.
is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Nkwangwa.
Well, thank you, House Chair. Malibongwe. Molweni bomama. House Chair and honorable members, taking advantage of the progressive legal framework and tools at our disposal to fight against the abuse of the most vulnerable, the women and children, we must address or challenge the normalization of violence as an expression of masculinity or male dominance in our society. Its foundation, this kind of social behavior must be demobilized where it originates from, in our families and our communities. This also includes the prevention of exposure to violence and the provision of consistent and unwavering support to those affected by violence in an effort to try and reduce the consequences and the after effects of that violence. Through our community and active citizen mobilization, we must address the intersection between norms that relate to alcohol, drugs, and alcohol abuse and their effect on violence. We must daily engage through well-designed and targeted educational programs, reduce backlash by engaging men and boys in gender equality, building relationship skills and social connections that will reduce the extent and the scourge of violence in our societies. Related to this is the promotion of broader social equality and addressing of structural discrimination and disadvantages that create and perpetuate the conditions of violence in our communities. Eyona nto icacileyo masiyibeke ngesiXhosa. Siyeke ukukhumsha. Le nto iqala kanye phaa isiseko sayo siphaa kwifamily, whether we like it or not. It's how we bring up the boy child in particular. Ezawubangela ufumanise ukuthi uzawungena kwisociety acinga ukuthi violence right. And it's the engagements that thina as fathers to these boy children esingazenziyo. And what we must do, as leaders ourselves, you see what we also do, is that whenever there are incidents of violence against women in particular and children, the male leaders are often quiet. They sit back and wait for the women leaders in our society to be the first ones to speak and condemn those acts before they join in support. What we should be doing now,
Order, honorable members at the back there.
Bangola, Lamasela. You see,
Honorable member on the podium, also withdraw what you have said.
no, I withdraw and I pinda xa ndihleli phantsi.
Order.
That is the issue, is the role that we as abantu abangootata are playing in society. I want to say, for instance, nathi singabantu abangootata must engage in these very courageous and sometimes uncomfortable discussions with our daughters. There was one instance where umntanam, for instance, kwafuneka afowunele umamakhe ese-Eastern Cape nam, isithi usexeshe ndikhona ndingutata. I felt like ukuthi mna as utata ndifeyilishile. And I had to address that. To say ukuthi mntanam ndikufelaphi, let's talk about these issues, because if asizuzithethe izinto nabantwana bethu, including naba bangamakhwenkwe, asisuke bazawuphuncuka ngomso singazi bakwenza ntoni, siphinde sothuke xa babetha abantu, sibe sibetha oomama thina apha endlini. Singayithethi phaa ngaphandle ukuthi siyababetha, sizenze bhetele kunekade icala.
Order, honorable member. Honorable Kwankwa, come back to the podium. Withdraw that statement.
Oh, you want me to finish my speech?
I
Oh,
want you to
I
withdraw
beg your
what you
pardon.
know you said.
Consider it withdrawn. Thank you so much.
Go and sit down, thank you. Honorable members, can we be in order? And one thing I want to advise members, because they are not aware maybe, those of you who sit at the extreme of this house, in the benches on the last row, on all sides, your voice, even if you think you are speaking quietly, carries. I actually hear your conversations, even some of those you don't want me to hear. Yes. One day you'll be surprised, because I can hear. So I'm just warning you for future that don't think because you are sitting on the last desk, awuvakala pak podium. Nivakala even better than the people sitting in front. Order, honorable members. Honorable Buchman.
House Chairperson, honourable members and fellow South Africans. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa in Section 205 states that the objectives of the police service are to prevent, combat and investigate crime, to maintain public order, to protect and secure the inhabitants of the Republic and their property, and to uphold and enforce the law. The SAPs have a pivotal role to play to ensure that complaints dealing with violence against women and children are properly processed, investigated, and court-ready dockets are prepared. In Vision 2030 of the National Development Plan, it envisaged that people living in South Africa feel safe at home, at school and at work, and they enjoy a community life free of fear. Women walk freely in the streets and children play safely outside. The police service is well-resourced and professional, staffed by highly skilled officers who value their work, serve the community, safeguard lives and property without discrimination, protect the peaceful against violence, and respect the rights to equality and justice. The African National Congress in the January 8 statement of 2017 highlighted the fact that we must do more to eradicate gender-based violence and abuse of women and children. The latest crime statistics paints a stark reality that we must face as a nation. In the 2016-17 financial year, 3,478 women and children were murdered, of whom 2,039 were women, 574 boys, and 265 girls. One of the goals of the 16 Days campaign is to expand accountability beyond the justice, crime prevention, and security cluster to include all government clusters and provinces. Indeed, the solution lies with all of us. The SAPs have legal obligations to attend to the matter of gender violence in general and more specifically domestic violence. The National Development Plan on page 398 makes the following statement on domestic violence. Domestic violence is a complex issue which should be addressed in a multifaceted way. Education of both women and men should be undertaken with social partners and the private sector. The private sector has a very important role to play since work hours and productivity are negatively affected because of domestic violence. The effective implementation of the DVA requires adequate budgeting for which education and awareness training as well as training of police and justice officials are necessary. House Chairperson, The lack of service delivery and compliance have been raised continuously over the past 2 decades by the departments mandated to oversee the compliance of members of SAPS to the DVA. The functioning on monitoring and implementation of the DVA resides with the Civilian Secretariat of Police. The visits of the CSP are aimed at identifying challenges with implementation of the DVA by police stations and to equip the police stations with information on the manner in which compliance and implementation can be improved, focusing on the following areas: regulatory compliance, record keeping, and service offered to complainants. Command and control in the monitoring of the implementation of the DVA are crucial. The lack of consequences for SAPS members failing to comply with the requirements of various instruments is having a very negative effect on the realization of the DVA Act. The non-adherence to the legislative requirements of the DVA is denying justice to those who fall victim to domestic violence. We are of the firm view that the Civilian Secretariat needs to start assessing the reasons for non-compliance with the DVA at all levels of the South African Police Service. At station level, the assessment needs to center on the lack of consequences to members failing the necessary forms correctly and comprehensively. Additionally, the research should focus on the reasons of station commanders not checking the relevant registers for compliance. At cluster level, the Secretariat must assess the reasons for cluster commanders not inspecting the registers at the cluster stations and not addressing the deficiencies with the relevant station commander. Lastly, at national level, the Secretariat should assess the reasons for provincial commissioners not being held responsible for the failure of the management structures under their command and control in being accountable for the non-compliance of the DVA. The compliance forum established between the South African Police Service and the Civilian Secretariat at national and provincial level can contribute to improve the effectiveness of the compliance monitoring of the DVA. House Chairperson, there is a vast array of SAPS national instructions and standing orders that provides for minimum standards for the treatment of the victims of crime, including the rights to respect and dignity, information and practical assistance, including assistance to people with special needs. The SAPS Division of Management Intervention must step up their efforts of improving quality assurance and interventions to improve performance at station and cluster level. We have 1,143 police stations in the Republic of South Africa. Public representatives at the 3 tiers of government can play a proactive role in ensuring that SAPS stations live up to their duties in terms of the DVA Act and other relevant legislation. MPs should visit the police stations in their allocated constituencies and engage with the station commanders on the compliance with the DVA. In terms of the community police forums, the NDP states that focus should be placed on strengthening the oversight functions of the CPFs to hold local police management accountable to community needs. The Portfolio Committee on Police has requested the Civilian Secretariat to develop a funding model for CPFs and recommended that the organizational structure of the locations of CPFs be reviewed. CPFs should be at local level be the driver to ensure that gender-based violence are prioritized and acted upon. The ANC believes that the professionalization of the SAPS through the implementation of the NDP recommendations is key to ensure better compliance and better performance in responding to the scourge of violence against women and children. There are 8 practical measures, House Chairperson, that should be prioritized to enable better performance. 1. The management of dealing with complaints pertaining with violence against women and children by station commanders, cluster commanders, should count a greater weight during performance evaluation, and performance agreements should be amended
Order,
accordingly.
Honorable Ollis. I can see you are in the House. Continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Secondly, compulsory consequence management for all SAPS members at all levels who do not adequately respond to complaints relating to violence against women and children. 3. Ongoing training and capacity building programs for SAPS first responders to deal with victims of domestic violence and sexual violence. 4. More resources to be allocated to the SAPS family violence, child protection and sexual offences units. 5. Complainants who do not get adequate service should immediately escalate complaints to shift commanders, station commanders, cluster commanders, provincial commanders and the National Commissioner and copy the Civilian Secretariat on the complaints. 6. The Civilian Secretariat of Police, including the Provincial Police Secretariat, should intensify their station audit rollout and cooperate with NGOs and civil society to highlight stations that do not adhere to the minimum standards of assistance to gender violence victims. Increasing awareness campaigns countrywide to educate learners at schools, churches, and local communities about FCS campaigns. And lastly, increase the detection rate of violent crimes committed against women and children, and increase court-ready dockets to increase prosecutions. In closing, House Chairperson, I want to quote from a speech by President Nelson Mandela that he delivered on 9 August 1996 in Pretoria at the Women's Day event, and I quote, "Violence against women is a serious and escalating evil in our society. It's both part of the subordination of women and the consequence of that inequality. Our anger should strengthen the resolve of all of us, inside and outside government, individuals, organizations, and communities to join hands with the police in combating crime. Our ultimate victory in the war against criminals depends on the support and cooperation of every sector of society. We know that criminals, including those that abuse women, depend on the people around them, women as well as men, keeping silent, even though they reject what they are doing. The time has come to speak up and expose the criminals. Only through a partnership of police, with police and those they will serve, we will truly achieve our goal." Close quote. Our Chairperson, I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Carter.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I commend COPE's contribution to this debate by quoting from a sermon entitled, "But If Not," delivered by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in 1967. And I quote, "I say to you this morning that if you have never found something so dear and precious to you that you will die for it, then you aren't fit to live. You may be 38 years old, as I happen to be, and one day some great opportunity stands before you and calls upon you to stand for some great principle, some great issue, some great cause, and you refuse to do it because you are afraid. You refuse to do it because you want to live longer. You're afraid that you will lose your job, or you are afraid that you will be criticized, or that you will lose your popularity, or you're afraid that somebody will stab or shoot or bomb your house. So you refuse to take a stand. Well, you may go on and live until you are 90, but you are just as dead at 38 as you would be at 90. And the cessation of breathing in your life is but the belated announcement of an earlier death of a spirit. You died when you refused to stand up for right. You died when you refused to stand up for truth. You died when you refused to stand up for justice." Close quote. Now, Chairperson, the message from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is loud and clear, that if we don't take a stand on a matter of great principle, such as taking a stand against violence against women and children, part of us dies individually and collectively as a society. We all must loudly declare, "Count me in." Chairperson, activists and researchers are at one in that violence against women and children has reached pandemic proportions, that national programs such as Women's Day or 16 Days of Activism have little, if any, impact in curbing it, that we have a good progressive legislation, but we have poor implementation, that we have poor support structures for victims, that we have low conviction rates and even lower numbers of victims having the confidence in our criminal justice system to come forward, that there's a lack of political will and leadership. Now, fellow South Africans, colleagues and comrades, I'm calling on you today to take a stand. If anyone dear and precious to you, a family member, a neighbor, or a colleague is a victim of any form of abuse, physical or mental, stand up for what is right. Stand up for the truth. Stand up for
Honourable
justice.
Member,
Stand up
your
and be
time
the change you
is
wish
up.
to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Dadu.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Because one of the most heart-wrenching forms of violence against women and children is sexual violence, I thought you may find this discussion thread between a human rights advocate and a media correspondent interesting. Now, the context of the discussion is the distribution of pornography via the internet in South Africa. The correspondent starts off saying, wish our constitution actually worked for the people when they can actually police streets, have a justice system that works and cut out all corruption. Then you can start talking about the effective ways of limiting certain kinds of online material within reason. The advocate responds saying that porn is probably the most pervasive way of devaluing human beings. It is, in our view at least, as important as the concerning issues that you have raised. Now, pornography sends out a culture-shaping message about the value of human beings. Some in society may have established internal value systems and may be able to reject the narrative. Others, however, are profoundly affected, and society, usually the most vulnerable, pay the price. The correspondent then says, I hear you, yet I would say that the most pervasive way of devaluing humans is to have them starve with no proper education, with no hope of the future, with no employment. What you mentioned, says the advocate, are the fruits of devaluing. Once we have stopped valuing each other properly, we will let these things happen to each other. Now, the correspondent replies, very few people anyway have even got access to the internet. The prevalence and culture of rape and abuse in our country need fixing well before regulating online porn. Actually, the advocate points out, on the 2016 stats alone, South Africa is the 20th largest porn-consuming country in the world, but it is number 1 for accessing porn via smartphones. And according to research, porn consumption is in fact a cause of sexual violence. To say that porn has no influence on South Africa's rape and sexual abuse stats is irrational. Now, the disinterest of MPs and the department in the matter during deliberations on the Films and Publications Amendment Bill has been disappointing for the ACDP and the many others who recognize the connection and the danger. It is, however, indicative of why South Africa has such a huge problem with sexual violence against women and children. The real question should not be which measures are too little or too much to combat sexual violence, but what do we value and care about most? Now, if the answer is being entertained and sexually aroused, then we're surely on track. If it is protecting and reducing the risk of women and children becoming yet another victim of sexual violence, we must rethink the issue of pornography and ensure that it does not have the free rein in society that it presently has. In this way, we will demonstrate our commitment to no violence against women and children and not just pay lip service.
Thank you. Our time is up. Honorable Masango.
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo, ngibingelele nomama kwegallery. South Africa's government has failed children. As we speak, House Chairperson, there are 11 million beneficiaries on social grants. Over 11 million children live in poverty, and 136 children died every month of complications arising from acute severe malnutrition in the last 3 years. 1.8 million infants and adolescents still do not have access to social grants. And 1 in 3 children are the victims of sexual and physical abuse before they reach the age of 18. In KZN and Eastern Cape, only 19% of child abuse cases were reported to police by social services. Honorable Chairperson, it is quite clear that the government, through the failures of the Department of Social Development, is playing a key role in allowing the abuse of children to persist. What the country is not aware of is that the Department of Social Development and SASSA, led by the Venerable Minister, are once again placing thousands of lives at risk as our foster care system ages towards a collapse. Currently, a High Court order, which dates back to the ruling of 2011, which allowed SASSA to pay foster care grants to beneficiaries when foster care placements lapse, will expire at the end of this very year. The court order, which was again extended in 2014, was meant to be a temporary arrangement that would allow SASSA enough time to fix the backlog, clogging the foster care system. The minister was meant to implement a comprehensive legal reform that would ease the process of reviewing foster care placements orders. Yet, 6 years later, the backlog remains, and there's still no finalized comprehensive legal reform as the court requested. What there is, however, is growing uncertainty over what this may mean for the payout of the foster grants. The result is that 30 to 50,000 children under foster care are at risk of not receiving their grants come January 2018. Once again, Honorable House Chair, it is another day at SASSA, and it's another grants crisis proudly brought to you by the Minister of Social Development, Minister Dlamini. This is the same minister, by the way, who, while tasked with the delivering of 17 million grants to our poorest citizens, dodges accountability at every possible turn. And while dodging, Dlamini escapes accountability in Parliament, she crisscrosses the country campaigning for the elective conference of the African National Congress. Why shouldn't she? When it is the ANC that allows her to display her disdain for the 17 million South Africans who rely on social grants. The ANC government only acknowledges a crisis when it is before the courts. Children in poor households are the most vulnerable citizens, and it is the state's responsibility to ensure that the constitutional rights are protected. But what we have observed as a country is that the rights of these citizens have been relegated to the periphery, while the ANC continues to drag the country along with it as it self-destructs. Women and children bear the brunt of the scourge of poverty and inequality, and this makes them even more susceptible to abuse. Social development should be at the forefront of battle against women and children abuse, but the department has been rendered ineffective because the minister fires any competent officials whilst retaining those who are willing to do her bidding. If the department is ever to function in any efficient way at all, one in which 1.4 billion of taxpayers' money will not be irregularly spent, it must be rid of those who are hell-bent on serving their own narrow interest. As a Democratic Alliance, we will make sure we change this when we take over in 2019.
Honorable Chair, there is no denying that women and children are caught up in the context of violence, sexual abuse, and male chauvinism. This presents the skewed power relations ingrained in our social psyche. On the occasion of the 5th Business Engaged Mainstream Awards, held in Midrand early in September this year, Minister Shabangu, raised pertinent questions on gender exclusivity across the spectrum. She has stated, as I open quote, at the heart of effective gender mainstreaming is an agenda-setting approach that transforms social practices, attitudes, and gendered power relations. There is also the global market to consider. How do we ensure that gender mainstreaming does not only remain in technical aspect of human resources, recruitment policies, but remains a priority for social change, close quote. Honorable members, the classification of our problems is handsomely argued by the minister. The struggle for women emancipation should reinforce the fundamental change in how society underscores the occupation of women in the social, cultural, and religious arena. Honorable Chair, the AIC has a strong affinity towards the reconfiguration of family values and structures. We believe that solid family structures are a function of a functioning and ethical society. Minister Shabangu's work represents the early form of women and child revolution, reincarnating the rigor of our forebears who mounted a revolution against gender discrimination. There are fundamental questions that we need to interrogate as a society as we maneuver towards the journey of affirming the right of women and children. Prominent radio anchor Reddy Tlabi asked the following questions. A, has the society had the conversation about the barriers to justice for women who approach the law? B, have we fully confronted the entitlement of men in positions of power to young women's bodies? C, does the law, with its fixation of the facts, represent the limits of human endeavor?
Honorable member, your time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mpele.
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. The topic for today's debate on 16 Days of Activism is based on the idea of a whole of society approach, involvement from all safety stakeholders, and working in partnership to reduce violence against women and children. And the minister hinted to this with the important idea of men as partners. And as the slogan of the Western Cape Department of Community Safety says, safety is everyone's responsibility. Now, arguably, the most important stakeholder in the safety partnership towards ensuring a less violent country together is the criminal justice system, which resorts under the national government and is therefore a direct responsibility of the ANC as the incumbent governing party, although not for much longer. Without effectiveness and efficiency in the police and public prosecution services, the efforts of all other safety partners have limited effect at best and at worst are rendered impotent. The effectiveness and efficiency of these law enforcement agencies is fundamentally dependent on the quality, competence, and caliber of their top leadership and management. And on this score, the ANC government has been a dismal failure. And Minister Shabangu completely ignored this travesty. So I want to say to the minister, what matters to South Africans is not the government's intentions, but the government's performance and effectiveness. And I'm actually a bit embarrassed for the minister, to be honest, that she would come up here and trumpet the Namola app, which certainly is a good initiative. And I also have downloaded the app last week, although I hope I never have to use it. But the fact is that an innovation like the Namola app is a direct result and only becomes necessary because of the failures of the SAPs under the ANC governments, with police stations who don't pick up the phone when people in distress call to report crime, and when the 10111 emergency call centers are understaffed and under-resourced. That is what causes the private sector and civil society to band together and come up to plug the gap with innovations like the Namola app. And if I may deal very quickly with the Honorable Tembekwayo for her attacks on the DA for the dope system on some farms, I put this to you, Honorable Member. Who runs the labor inspectorates that is supposed to do labor law compliance checks and lay charges against those in contravention? Abazali be-EFF ukhongolose, khuluma nabo inkinga ilapho.
Order, Chair. Honorable Mpele, can you take your seat? What's the point of order, Honorable
Is it
Member?
parliamentary to be told as EFF we have cousins here in this house? Don't have cousins here.
Order,
We're
Honorable
EFF
Member.
here. It's our own.
Order. Honorable Member, take a seat. I'm sure the member has got to the point. Proceed, Honorable.
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. In fact, if I may clarify, ngithe umzali, ayabazala, umzali.
Still,
Order.
we don't have parents here. EFF
Order.
is a political party on its own bed.
Order.
Please, we
Honourable
don't have
member,
parents here. Please.
Take a seat.
Don't say hi. I'm
Order.
correcting your member here.
Order. Honorable Mbele, I think just stay clear away from that because others may just throw the same to you. So let's proceed with your debate.
Indaba, okay. Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. Now, Police Minister Mbalula is on record that he and Mr. Zuma are finalizing the appointment process for a new permanent head of the Hawks and a permanent National Police Commissioner, respectively. The choices of these candidates for these positions will demonstrate to the public how seriously this ANC government takes the crucial need for fit-for-purpose leadership and therefore professional and effective policing, and therefore crime reduction for safe streets and safe homes in South Africa, particularly for women and children. But the fundamental problem we face as a country in tackling this scourge is a lack of political will within the ANC national government to do the things required to turn the police service around. So the only solution is for the DA to come into power in 2019. So whether NDZ or CR17, sizowakhipha amasela.
Honorable Mbele, back to the podium, withdraw that last statement.
Chairperson, is that not a political statement of debate?
Withdraw. Just that last word you made. I don't mind about the rest you said.
House Chair.
But that last word.
Sihlalo wami, because ngiyakuthanda futhi umuhle, ngiyahola.
Order, Honorable Majake.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Ke rata go dumedisa members of the public. The way you have actually come out today shows how much serious everybody in South Africa takes this matter that is being debated today. We as the ANC take the matter serious. And we intend to do whatever is possible to ensure that the scourge of gender-based violence in South Africa is reduced. Re utlwile dillo tsa lona ka bana ba lona ba bulawang. Se sizwile abantwana benu ababulalwayo. And the ANC is ready to fight this war. What is just remaining is to ask ourselves, who will support us if we have an opposition like this?
Mama, gallery. Order.
Honorable.
Order, Honorable Majake, just take a seat. Order. Omama abanye bebengakafiki isiqala bengicelile ukuthi singashayi izandla sihlale nje sithule ngoba umsebenzi ngowalaba baphansi. I know some of you were late when I advised our guests in the gallery about the rules that we are not allowed to participate on what is happening here. So please, even if we feel good, let's not clap our hands. Even if we feel bad, let's not shout from the gallery. Ours is here to observe and listen at the debate. Ngiyabonga ke mama singaphindi. Order, Honorable Member.
As Chairperson, may I address you in terms of Rule 85?
Yes.
We've already had rulings in this House before that war talk is not permitted in the House. Now, the Honourable Member has incited to war. If a member is going to incite to war, you need to bring troops with you. Unfortunately, your troops haven't pitched up for the battle today.
Order, Honourable Member. I will actually look at the context at which that word was used. So I will come back to the House. Proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the House. It will actually sound like war when we as the ANC are saying we are serious about fighting the scourge of violence against women and children, which you are actually trivializing. Because whatever you've been coming to say here is just this alarmist approach, this pessimistic approach. You don't create hope in the hearts and minds of South Africans. Whenever you come to the podium, you want to behave towards the ANC and government as if there is something that is wrong. Always shouting, fire, fire. Even when there's no fire, you look around you, you see nothing. You use the podium only to campaign, to try and look better as a political party. There will come time for campaigning, but when we deal with issues of this nature, we want the opposition that is there to come and support the ruling party and its programs. Honorable Chairperson of the House,
Order.
As we celebrate 2017 as the centenary year of the birth of Isitwalandwe, Oliver Reginald Tambo, we remember what he said as the president of the ANC on the 14th of November 1981 in Luanda, Angola. Open quotes, we invite the women's section of the ANC and the black women of South Africa, who are the more oppressed, more exploited than any section of the population, to take up this challenge and assume their proper role outside the kitchen among the fighting ranks of our movement and its command posts, I close quote. At the dawn of democracy, the ANC-led government introduced measures that promoted an integrated approach to elimination of the scourge of gender-based violence. The National Crime Prevention Strategy of 1996 inculcated a victim-centered approach in the criminal justice system. Not what we hear the opposition on my left actually saying. Honorable Robinson, I wonder who wrote your speech. I believe so much in you, like a gender activist. You sit in committees of women, but you come here, you sound like it's not yourself. You have been sent just to come and have an opportunity of attacking the ANC. Where is your voice about the fights of women? Women of South Africa are getting killed. And you come here, you come and grandstand, abuse the podium and say things that normally, even in committees for women, you do not say. I think you must be ashamed of yourself. Don't talk like Honorable Mbele. I understand he's a man, and this is why he has absolutely nothing to say. He even attacks the app that has actually been created for women so that women of South Africa can know how to report and have a quick response. But of course, if you're a man and you don't care, why do you have to actually volunteer yourself to come and actually present on behalf of women? Honorable Chairperson of the House, through the efforts of the ANC-led government, we have seen an enactment of progressive pieces of legislation such as Domestic Violence Act, Protection from Harassment Act, Amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Act, Amendment to the Maintenance Act. We have seen the establishment of sexual offences courts and community affairs units in the National Prosecuting Authority, such as the victim-centered Tutuzela care centers. One thing that I want to actually say is that when it comes to some of these acts, the Maintenance Act, it's actually also important because we sometimes get lost in just talking about murder and assault, and we sometimes forget things like financial abuse of women. The Maintenance Act has actually been galvanized to be sure that these men who come, some of them grandstand here, and want to talk like they understand the plight of women, they are actually made to account. And of course, we understand that the issues of maintenance are not only about getting the money from the men, because children are not children of men only, they're children of women and men. But mostly it's women who suffer because of men who do not want to actually maintain. And it's actually based on the kind of history that we come from, where women are the ones who mostly do not have funds, the resources. So South Africa, in its fight against gender-based violence and abuse of women, has actually amended even acts like the Maintenance Act. There is work in progress in reviewing the 2003 Victims Charter in a bid to substitute it with another legislative framework seeking to bring the victim to the center of the criminal justice. The Department of Social Development, of course, that you are always attacking. I don't know why you are actually bringing SASA here. Honorable Van der Merwe of the IFP, even herself, I heard her talking about SASA. And then come Honorable Mbele of the DA talking about SASA. Today is not the SASA day. We know you've got ammunition enough to actually attack the Minister of Social Development, but for heaven's sake, today we are actually talking about how as South Africans are we going to actually manage to come up with something that will actually rescue the lives of women and children of this country. So the Department of Social Development has a lot of other work that they are doing that is so good that you don't have the ability of actually recognizing. What they are actually doing, their Gender-Based Violence Command Center has established a 24-hour call center dedicated to providing support and counseling to victims of gender-based violence. And also, by the way, it's the same department that is actually responsible for the register of abusers of women and children. The Department of Justice and Correctional Services, through NPA, has been running the Indaba Zita project, which seeks to train traditional leaders, prosecutors, and court clerks on domestic violence matters in rural areas. The report by the ANC Women's League, Bupirima province last Friday in the Northwest, condemned acts of violence reported about the EFF chief whip in the provincial legislature, who is also EFF deputy provincial chairperson, who assaulted a female colleague and also threatened to cut off her private parts during a heated argument. The EFF must be decisive in dealing with such barbaric acts and utterances that are a mockery to South Africa's constitutional democracy. And I know my EFF colleagues here, female colleagues, you are liberated. You are not going to allow this to actually happen right under your nose and not manage to actually address it. What needs to be done better now?
Order, Honourable Member. Machaga, can you take your seat? Honourable Member, what's the point of order?
No, the point of order is that the member there is talking about issues that she knows nothing about. And at least if ever we have such in our ranks in the EFF, we deal with it. Unlike what you do in the ANC,
Honourable Member.
The mayor who sexually assaults children. To do
Honourable Member.
A member of this house, you are
Honourable
doing
Member.
absolutely nothing about
Honourable
it.
Member.
And stop talking about things that you...
Honourable members, when we raise a point of order, once again, we need to, Mam Kawul, this is a point of order that you're requesting, but Honourable Member, you steered clear and decided to enter on a debate with an honourable member. I understand what you say, but I'm saying it no more becomes a point of order once you start to engage on a debate. Honourable Majake, can you proceed?
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I'm quite shocked to see a woman pointing fingers, being an apologist of somebody who abuses women. Very shocking.
On a point of order.
What needs to be done to make
Honourable
it better?
Majake, can you take your seat, Honourable Member?
I'm not an apologist. I'm telling you that you are keeping molesters in the house.
Order.
And they are members of
Honourable
parliament. You are
Member.
keeping women abusers.
Order. Honourable members, can we please take the issues of debate on political conduct, some of which don't relate to this house? Can we please stick to point of orders that are appropriate so that we don't end up engaging on matters that we're not supposed to? Honourable
Chair.
Majeke, can you proceed?
Chair.
Yes, Honourable Chauke, what's the point of order?
I just want to bring the House to the attention that in the gallery today, we have children that are really coming here to observe and to hear what members are saying. Please, can we just maintain
Honourable
the
members
of the House in respect of the
Honourable members, can we please be in order? I've noted your point, Honourable Chauke. Honourable Majeke, can you please conclude your debate?
Thank you, Chairperson. For the children in the gallery, we used to the circus. But in this house, we continue to do work for South Africa.
Honourable Majeke,
Have
can you
hope.
relax? What is your point of order? You are not supposed to direct what the member must say. Order. You are not supposed to assist. Can you state your point of order?
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
Mr.
what is your
Chair,
point?
Please also protect us in this house. Angithi uyasukuma ukomisa Veronica ukhole a point of order. And then the member in the podium, she continue attacking us. So we have to defend ourselves, Chair.
Honourable
so
member.
I'm appealing to you also to protect us in this house, Chair.
Can you take a seat, honourable member? I spoke to all of you as members about the conduct in this debate. Can you please proceed, Honourable Majake?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. As we proceed, what needs to be done to make it better? Close monitoring of gender-based violence statistics for SAPS, NPA, courts, correctional centers, parole program in respect of gender-based violence, taking into consideration also the relatives to the victims that were murdered. To promote coherent country gender-based violence program with a clear message. It is wrong to murder a woman. It is wrong to assault a woman. It is wrong to rape a woman. It is wrong to traffic a woman and turn her into
Order,
labor or sex
honourable
slave.
member.
It is wrong to financially
Your
exploit
time
a
is
woman
up.
as your spouse or a partner. I thank you, Honourable
Honourable
Chairperson.
Minister. Honourable Kaula, you have not been given an opportunity to speak. Can you please be in order? Proceed, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. May I take this opportunity to ngqale ngibulise omama notata abakhona sibonge kakhulu nomama bomthandazo abaqhubekeka beza la bezosixhasa sikhuluma ngeenkinga ezibhekene nabantwana nabantu besifazane. Siyabonga kakhulu ukuba nibe nathi namhlanje nishiye izindlu zenu nibe nathi. Chairperson, I just want to say we continue to come here and continue to reflect on issues affecting women when it comes to violence against women and children. I want to say today, the ANC, not starting today, has always had clear programs. Kaula.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members, can we please allow the debate to proceed? Honourable,
we continue. Uma Kaulu yisigebengu uyejele.
Chair.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members, can we please be in order? I asked you to stop interjecting.
On a point of order, Chair.
There is a member who has requested a point of order. What's your point of order?
Madam Chair, thank you. I don't have a point of order, but I would like to know if the Minister is prepared to take a question.
Minister, are you prepared to take a question?
Chairperson, I want to say the ANC has always continued.
It means she's not taking your question.
To fight for women.
Madam Chair, but
And
the Minister...
as a country,
she hasn't given me an answer because she mentioned
I think in
programs, but nothing about
Honourable
Manana.
member, can you please take a seat? You asked the question, the minister proceeded, which means she's not answering your question. So can you please take a seat?
Chairperson, we
Can
in the
you take a seat?
ANC.
Order, Honourable Shabangu,
We
Honourable
came-
Mente. What's your point of order?
No, the member on the podium must withdraw his gebeng. Mama Kaula is gebenga, and yena at least akakabikho involved like yena were involved.
Order, Honourable Member. Honourable Mente, I asked you not to engage on a debate. You are raising a point of order. You are asking the minister to withdraw the statement that she made and allow the chair to rule. Don't start then to add your point of order because it cancels the issue that you are actually raising. Honourable Minister, you know that you have to raise a substantive matter when there is an issue that you want to raise in respect of a member. I'll ask you to withdraw this Gebenga. Wait. Order. Honourable members, just allow the minister not to try and assist in any way.
Chairperson, I withdraw.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Honourable Chairperson, I also want that this House note, owakashaba ngumntwana akaye ejele ngoba akabulalanga muntu, akenzanga muntu, akadlengulanga muntu. I think I want to put it on record. Chairperson, ANC had a clear program right from its inception. It is the ANC which came up with the Women's Charter, which address matters affecting women in this country. As we speak today, we are here because of the struggles of the women of the ANC. We are here, that's the one which came up with policies which protects women. That's the one which talks about ensuring we fight violence against women. Hence, we are proud today that we are rolling out courts which attends to sexual offenses in our country. We will continue.
Order. Order, honorable members. Yes, we are allowed to interject, but we are not allowed to make running commentaries. Can we just allow the member to proceed? I'm sure she heard you with one ear about closing them down. Continue, honorable member. Honorable Robinson, what's your point of order?
I believe the minister is misleading the House because they are not being rolled out, they're being cancelled.
Honorable member, I would really ask that that matter be reflected upon because we can't make a ruling on what you are saying to ask the minister to withdraw. We'll have to look at factually on what we are saying and what she says, and then we can make a ruling. Proceed, honorable minister.
Thank you, Chair. Sexual offences courts are being rolled out by the government of the ANC. We want to put it on record. Chairperson, I want to say we are here to look at programs and addressing the scourge of violence in our country. Coming to the opposition party, which is the DA, they claim to have a program which intends to address abuse of women. They ran a petition online since August 2017. Rest what? Signatures. They had a target of 50,000, and to date, they've only done 3,044 rands. What is 44? What is that? Online petition, it has not succeeded, which intends to protect women. They have failed us. The DA network, which they're talking about, which is led by the Honorable Robinson, she's supposed to be leading. There's no work. We've looked at what you're doing. We can't see anything. When we deal with issues of sexual assault by men, what do we see today? Where's Archibald, who's an MP? What have you done? Edmund, Leonard Max, one of the issues, an email, does X-Gate? What have you done to it in making sure that you protect women? Nothing, nothing. Mbele comes here and calling himself a shadow minister of police. What does he say? Nothing, absolutely nothing. As the ANC, we are decisive. We have dealt with Manana as a party. We have dealt with the mayor of Esidibeng decisively so. When are you going to be decisive? Where is your program? Where are your programs which address violence against women in our country? We have a program. ANC is committed in fighting violence against women in our country. I also want to say, you come here, you talk about the Minister of Social Development. As the ANC, we continue to prioritize matters of women in terms of empowerment, social challenges faced by our women in our country. We empower women economically. We deal with rural women. I am proud as I stand here. We're rolling out dialogue. Come, Honorable Stander, join us in the Eastern Cape. We'll be working with traditional leaders who will be joining us, who will be addressing violence. They are very much concerned. You come here and grandstand, say nothing and keep on complaining. You cannot work with us. Where are you? We are working with the churches in fighting the scourge of violence. Where are you? I'm inviting you. Join us and stop talking from this podium. Make sure that you are on the ground. Save our people, save our women. Where's your program as the DA? We have a program. We have the Women's Charter. We have the various laws we have passed in protecting women in South Africa. We've brought men together. I am very proud as the ANC. We've seen men responding to our programs. We've seen men committing to fighting violence against. Over the weekend, we had a men's parliament. Where were you? Where were the men of the DA? Where were the women of the DA when we met having a national parliament? Where were you when men and women were marching to protest and make sure that they unite against gender-based violence? DA, what do you stand for? What do you stand for except complaining? Please stand up, roll up your sleeves, do the work on the ground, come with me. The whole districts of Eastern Cape, we will be working with everyone there. Where are you? When we went to Mpumalanga, where were you? When we went to Limpopo, where were you?
Chair.
When we went to Northern Cape, where were you? You were sitting here. The only thing you know, it's about coming here, where, and so what?
Chair.
And so what? Let's work. Come, let's go and work on the ground. Thanks, Chair.
Order. Order, honorable members. The business. This concludes the debate, and I will now suspend proceedings until 14 hours. Bells will be rung to alert members to the resumption of the business. Business is now suspended.